Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Preseason Reports, where today Chris Ransom and I break down Oklahoma offensive tackle Orlando Brown. Preseason Reports. Here on Preseason Reports, we break down college football stars for the upcoming season, and Orlando Brown is an intriguing prospect. He's big star at Oklahoma on the offensive line, not getting a lot of recognition. And the thing that surprises me, you would think going into Oklahoma, he would have a huge amount of recognition due to his heritage. But a lot of people fail to realize that there was a Cleveland Brown slash Baltimore Raven that was a huge star back in the 80s and 90s. His name was Zeus. Yes, that was his nickname, Zeus. He was dominating, overpowering, excellent at everything he did. Strongest guy you'll ever find on a football field. Orlando Brown Sr. Orlando Brown Jr. is his son. So his heritage is going to catch a lot of NFL scouts, and he's going to have a lot of eyes on him. So let's look and first break down his good points, his pros. Now, Brown has as I mentioned, a great heritage, but when it comes to the heritage, you also have to look at his overall ability as a blocker. His body is built for this. He's got the arms. He keeps his arms. He keeps the defenders away. He's got good arm length. He's got good hands. He's got good foot speed. He gets to the second level well. He's not as big as his father was. And he can down block. He can pull. He can do all these things that an offensive tackle is supposed to do. And this leads to very good pass protection. And that's what they're taught to do at Oklahoma. When it comes to pass protection, he is probably one of the best, if not the best, pass protector in the nation. He didn't give up a sack last year. And I don't think he gave up a sack in the previous year. I may be wrong on the previous year, but
This is what's intriguing about Orlando Brown. This is a guy that 360 pounds, might not be as big as his father from a muscle standpoint, but he has a bigger wingspan, long arms, passes the eye test, exceptional footwork for a tackle. I mean, David Sharp and Zach Banner had good footwork for tackles heading into their senior seasons, but this guy has, well, Sharp is a junior, but this guy has exceptional footwork, and he's 360 pounds.
well, the thing there is, Chris, with the footwork, the only thing I want with his footwork is to be more consistent. He has a tendency to get a little off on his footwork, and I would like for him to get more consistent with it, but overall, with his foot speed and the overall footwork that he has, I have no issues with his footwork other than the consistency of it, because it's there, especially in pass protection. He's probably the best pass protector in this draft. So if a team is looking to really upgrade their pass protection, he might be the guy. And the another thing about him, he turns defenders exceptionally well. Uh, he positions himself to a point that it's hard to get around him. And in run, well, I am not the biggest fan of his run blocking. He, like I said, he does get to the second. He's aggressive and he gets to the second level well, and he turns people well. The thing is, when he's pass blocking or when he's run blocking, however, he just doesn't get that. He doesn't use his muscle to its fullest extent. And when you don't use what you have to its fullest extent, that can lead to some issues. But since he does have it, it'll be easily taught back to him. If he doesn't get it this year, which I'm hoping he does, then then I think he's a junior, so he can either go back to school or go pro with his quarterback. So, he's going to have an opportunity to learn how to use that strength a lot better than he does it currently.
Yeah, he is a redshirt junior, I believe. He was the redshirt sophomore last year, and he could have came out last year as a sophomore redshirt and probably would have gone in the first 2-3 rounds. So he has never given up a career sack in his 2 seasons as a starter.
Yeah, and that is huge for any offensive lineman. Now, there are questions. I say inconsistent footwork, good footwork, but he tends to get sloppy on it every now and then. And I think that's just from a lack of concentration. And also his explosion off the snap. When he run blocks, he does not get off the snap extremely well. He's got to work on that first step and that explosion. Because I think right there, that's a lot of his problem with run blocking, and why he doesn't use his strength the way he should is because he doesn't get a chance. That defender's already on, or that defensive lineman is already on him before he really gets a chance to explode into somebody. So he's got to get off the snap better. What do you think?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is a player that did very well against Carl Lawson on tape, but they also struggled against some of the better run stuffers in the Big 12, which is why it's very difficult to assess where Brown stands at this point. I mean, his run blocking, his inconsistencies, his footwork, even though it's exceptional in pass protection situations, and the fact that he's 360, those 3 cons are why he's 43rd on my fantasy board, but I do think there's potential for him to move into the first round of this draft with another strong season under Baker Mayfield, just like I think there's potential for Mayfield to move into the first. But I have him and Mayfield 1 spot apart, which is convenient because we're talking about both of them today, I believe.
No, I actually never did get my Baker Mayfield notes together. I'm sure they're around the house somewhere, but so we'll probably do Baker Mayfield here in a couple of days. There's a chance I do it Monday once I find my notes. But back to Orlando Brown, and you got to question though, because of his lack of explosion off the snap straight line, is he only a zone blocking tackle? Because he does everything a zone blocking team would ever want an offensive tackle to do. So, what do you think about that? Do you believe he could be an every team tackle or play in every scheme, or do you think he'll be primarily a zone blocking tackle?
Difficult to say. I think he's primarily pass blocker or zone blocker, but we'll see if he can correct his issues with run blocking this year. It should be interesting to see if he can correct that now that Fareed and Mixon are gone.
Yeah, and I also have to look at the rest of his offensive line, because this will go into Baker Mayfield as well. They did not have a good overall offensive line last season. Other than Orlando Brown, the rest of that offensive line did not perform the way that you would expect a team with as many stars as it had to perform. Brown didn't give up sacks. Well, Brown didn't give up many pressures. There was pressure coming from all over the rest of that offensive line. And that's something that Brown nor Mayfield, D.D. Westbrook from last year, that's something none of those guys could stop. How do you think that they're going to have Orlando Brown? How do you think they're going to center that offensive line around Orlando Brown this year and what could be his last year with the team?
I think with Orlando Brown, you're going to have to worry about just correcting that one or two issue on tape. Other than that, he's pretty sound. And one of the things Orlando Brown does well is he maintains blocks. A lot of the tackles in this class I've watched have trouble maintaining blocks. And it's a huge issue with me because I have guys like Jamarco Jones out of Ohio State and Archie Lewis out of Boise State ranked higher than most draft experts in the country because they maintain their blocks well. Mitch Hyatt out of Clemson, 6'2", 295, he struggles with maintaining blocks. I've seen 7 games of his tape, and that is one thing he struggles with. Same could be said for Connor Williams out of Texas, who's good, but needs to correct that one issue. And if he does, he could go top 10. But that's a huge issue with a lot of tackles in this class. They have the technique, the pass blocking, the run blocking, the zone blocking, but only 4 or 5 of the 20 offensive tackles in this entire draft, including Orlando Brown, maintain blocks at a consistent level. So that's a huge issue with me, just like the quarterbacks with their mechanics this year. The tackles that maintain blocks is a huge issue with me this year, Joey.
Yeah, that's the same with me with the quarterbacks and a lot of their mechanics. Other than a couple quarterbacks, you really don't see the big emphasis on mechanics. So, I mean, you're going to have to look at this season. I think in college football, you're going to see a lot of talented players, a lot of natural skills. But you're going to see which players are the elite in the college football season simply because you're going to have those who fix their mechanics, who fix not being able to latch on, who fix their explosion off the ball, who fix their throwing motion and footwork and such. And those ones are going to rise above the ones who just use their natural talent. And will Orlando Brown be one of those guys that vaults himself to the college football landscape, the very top of it, simply by coming around, get more consistency with his footwork, gets that explosion off the ball, which comes back and helps his run blocking? Will he become one of the elite offensive players in college football, or will he just be the best pass protector and zone blocking offensive tackle in college football? Because that is not only huge for college football, that will also affect his draft stock in a huge way because not every team runs that type of scheme. So, what do you think? Do you think he corrects these issues?
Yeah, because correcting these issues will affect his stock. I mean, if I have a second round grade on him, but if he doesn't correct these issues, maybe he falls to the third or fourth round like Banner and Sharp did. I mean, that's not out of the realm of possibilities. And it's also possible he corrects these issues, loses some weight, and doesn't have to get into the first round. I mean, it's very up in the air at this point with Orlando Brown.
Well, Orlando Brown, a lot of his size is genetic. I mean, his dad was a huge man. Um, so the size I'm not as concerned with because he is extremely athletic. The big thing though is if you're saying trying to compare him to Zach Banner in that respect, Zach Banner was a lot smaller back a couple years ago, and he ballooned from like 320 or 320 or so up to 365 or something of that
Zach
nature.
Banner was like 6'3" or 6'5", and he ended up weighing 355, 360 pounds.
Yeah,
David Sharp was 6'5", but he was also got up to like 360. Orlando Brown is 6'6" or 6'8".
yeah,
So he's taller, and the weight is understandable because you're talking about someone who's taller, and most of their weight is generated from muscle rather than body fat. So
yeah,
that's why it's not as concerning, like you just pointed out.
yeah. It's. I mean, he didn't just. He's taller. He didn't just balloon overnight like the other guys did. Um, like David Sharp was like he spent his first couple years when he was such a highly touted prospect at 330, 340. Then all of a sudden he's up at, his last year is up at 365. Zach Banner, he was the same. He spent his better first couple years around 320, 330, and then he shot up to 355, 360. With Brown, he's just a big man. There is nothing that you can say about that. 6'8". His dad was a big man.
He was
There was
350 his first year, so he added 10 pounds of muscle from this year to last year. So
yeah, and that's always good. There was a story when I was reading up on Brown about how he was in high school. I forget where it said he was a sophomore or junior. He was playing. A personal foul was called, and I think this was a year after Zeus retired. And it was on Orlando Jr. And Zeus came down. He didn't go after the official, didn't go after the coaches. He walked right down, marched his butt on the field, and he was a big man. You could hear him coming down the stairs. He came out there. He got a hold of Orlando Jr., and he set him straight on that. It's like, so, I mean, Zeus kept his boy. I mean, he taught him well, taught him right, taught him not to make the same mistakes a lot of other people do, both on the field and off the field. So I think Orlando Brown, in a lot of ways, is going to have a leg up on the competition when it comes to both this year in college and in the NFL coming in, because he was just taught in a way that a lot of these kids aren't taught. He was kept under a close eye when it comes to his football, his career, how he should act, and so on and so forth. And that's the sign of what he's become is a sign of a great teammate, the sign of a leader. And that type of thing, how will that develop? How fast will he be able to put all that together and become the leader I expect him to be? And I know a lot of other people expect him to be, and I know Bob Stoops expects him to be. So how long until he puts that together with what he's learned?
a good point. How long is it going to take him for him to put that together? Because he did well against Carl Lawson in the bowl game for the Sugar Bowl, and Oklahoma won that Sugar Bowl. He blocked exceptionally well in that game, gave Baker Mayfield a lot of time to throw downfield.
Yeah, and that's important because Mayfield, a lot of his throws were running away from pressure. So if he doesn't have to worry about his blind side, I mean, that's a huge thing. And you also have to take into account that, he is, as I stated, one of the players that had a far better upbringing as far as football goes. Because you notice how the sons of coaches are far more adjusted. Most of the time, not all the time, the sons of NFL greats are far more adjusted. I wish I could say the same about the nephews of NFL greats, but that's a discussion for another time. But
the only quarterbacks that get their blind sides back are Lamar Jackson, who gets Jaron Christian back, Jake Browning, who gets Trey Adams back, and Baker Mayfield, who gets Orlando Brown back. Every other quarterback in this class is going to have a new blind side at left tackle. So if we end up talking about Lamar Jackson, Jake Browning, and Baker Mayfield as the top three quarterbacks picked in 2018, it's going to be because their blind sides came back and gave them more time in the pocket.
And the man who's going to end up leading, I have a feeling that Orlando Brown is going to end up leading all of those offensive tackles this year, and as well as the other top offensive tackles in college football this season, because he just has a makeup that he has a lineage, a makeup. He has a personality that makes you want to believe that he is going to be the one to lead college football's offensive linemen this season, and maybe even help Baker Mayfield lead Oklahoma into the NCAA tournament, which would be huge for Orlando Brown in a sense that it's the start of a journey for him that that you just get this feeling, because you have to remember, his dad died at age 40. His dad died early, just a couple years after retiring. So I think it was 3 or 4 years after he retired, he died. So it would also be an extremely feel-good story. And you can't help but root for a guy like that.
You really can't help but root for a guy like that, like you said. And while he's like my 7th or 8th offensive tackle on my rankings, he has talent and enough potential to move into the top 5 and get a first-round grade. There's no question that potential and that ability to succeed is there.
Yeah, and I know you're more of what have you done for me lately with your rankings. Me personally, I do factor in long-term potential more, and I think that's kind of due to my history as a coach, where I wanted to know what have you done for me lately, but also what can I do with you in the future. So I would say right now, he's probably my top offensive tackle overall. So because I think
Notre Dame's Mike McGlinchey.
Okay, he's my number 2 tackle overall. Thank you for reminding me about McGlinchey. But he's my number 2 offensive tackle in the country right now. Can he move up to the number 1 tackle in the country? The only thing standing between him and that distinction, I believe, is that explosion off the line. If he can get that explosion off the line, I believe he is more mobile than McGlinchey. I believe he's probably more athletic than McGlinchey. I've seen him pull like somebody who weighs 100 pounds less. He can down block, is probably better than anybody in the country.
Yeah, when I
What?
watched Orlando Brown's tape, not just his Oklahoma tape, but his high school tape, he was playing left tackle there too, and he was pancaking defenders to the point where his quarterback could just scramble in the red zone for a touchdown. Even though he was a pocket QB, he was pancaking guys so hard before he went to Oklahoma in high school that his quarterback could just sneak in for a touchdown, even though he wasn't very athletic. He was kind of small.
Yeah, and here's the thing. When you mentioned pancaking people, go back and watch that Auburn tape. In that Auburn tape, he pancaked, I know, 2 guys, and one of those guys was somebody in the open field, where he had gotten to the second level and led the way, and somebody just came up and tried to knock him out of the way, and he just mauled him. And to get a pancake on the line, okay, you got a hold of a guy, you got him on the line. But to get a pancake out on the second level because you took your 360-pound self, you got down there in front of your running back by 3 or 4 yards, and you pancaked a guy who was gunning for him and gave him an open field. I mean, now that's athleticism. That is strength. That is athleticism. That is saying, I want it more than you want it, and you can't do anything about it. That is imposing your will. And that makes me believe that this guy has something. This guy has something. And the only thing you have to do to recognize that is go back and watch that Auburn game, and you will see it as if you had never really paid attention to it before. You'll see a lot in that game from Orlando Brown.
Yeah, that Auburn game is a big game for him. And I'm trying to find a specific game of him that I want to watch. I think it's the Kansas game, because Kansas is a defensive end that's graded really highly, and he just manhandled him too. Like, Kansas has a sophomore redshirt or a junior redshirt type player at defensive end that's really good this year that could go in the first 2 rounds, and Orlando Brown just manhandled that player. But there was another Big Ten guy that he did bad against. I'm trying to think of his name. Maybe he's in the NFL. Maybe it was Carway. It's not coming to me at the top of my head at the moment.
Yeah, well, don't strain yourself, because I'm pretty sure we're going to come back and do an all Auburn or an all Oklahoma show at some point. And
because there's 3 other prospects. Baker Mayfield, there's Onigba Odidogbu. He's an edge player for Oklahoma. His name is impossible to pronounce. And then there's Jordan Thomas, the cornerback for Oklahoma that could have been a first-rounder this year but went back to school. So there's so many other Oklahoma players we could break down.
Yeah, if Oklahoma, in my view, is a top 5 team in college football right now, and you have to look at leadership to that one. And Orlando Brown, I have a feeling, is going to be the leader that these guys need to keep going. And I just want to see him, especially now where we're going to have new running backs. I really want to see him get that explosion off the snap and get his run blocking together, because that is his big issue. That is the only thing holding him back from being the best tackle in the nation right now. Do you have anything to add before we sign off for today, Chris?
I don't have anything else to add to that? That was a good bid on Orlando Brown Jr. for the Oklahoma Sooners.
So we're out of time for today. Remember, if you like us, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and show us the support. And thank you for joining in. Have a good day. For Chris Ransom, I'm Joseph Potter. We're signing out.